Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to a very special edition of This is Revolution Podcast. I say special edition because our guest and us had some scheduling issues. And instead of trying to do a pre recorded show that I could air later so I could actually take a break, I figured that this topic was something, I wouldn't say heavy, but something like I think a lot of people want to weigh in on. So sometimes it's like you guys get frustrated when we try to do these pre-recorded episodes. But I said, you know what? Who needs sleep? Let's do it live. Also, if you are a patron here on This is Revolution, the latest edition of the Crisis Papers is up. One of us is the killer, celebrity, cancel culture, and the illusion of politics, neoliberal realism. That is up right now. Even if you're not a patron and you want to read it, get a copy of it, or some of the other back issues, wherever you are watching or listening to the show, there is a link in the description to the Crisis Papers. You can just pick one up. Now, on to the matters at hand, which is the men are not okay. Today, we're diving into a topic that both the right and the left acknowledge, but approach in vastly different ways. That is the crisis of masculinity, particularly among downwardly mobile working class men. Over recent years, voices on the right, like Jordan Peterson, have gained traction by directly addressing issues of purpose, stability, and self-improvement for men. While Peterson's critique and approach rightly draw condemnation for their reactionary elements, his popularity reveals a broader unmet need that conservative figures have capitalized on. What happens when an entire demographic feels abandoned by both the labor market and, to some degree, by progressive movements themselves? In his recent work for Jacobin, journalist Ryan Zickgraf provides a stark portrait of this reality. Through narratives like that of a 51-year-old man scraping by on minimum wage, living in his grandmother's basement, and battling untreated health issues, Zickgraf paints a compelling picture of a cohort that has largely been neglected by public policy and society at large. In his article, Working Class Men Are Not Okay, and by the way, wherever you are watching or listening to this show, there is a link in the description to Ryan's article. Every time we have an article guest or a writer, we always put a link. It's the first thing you see in the description. But again, in his article, Working Class Men Are Not Okay, he writes, since his divorce years ago, he's floated between housing situations and minimum wage jobs. At present, he cooks at a charming but dumpy diner. Because he only nets minimum wage, he has difficulty paying off debt and making ends meet as the cost of living increases, unquote. With men in their 40s and 50s struggling for mere survival in precarious jobs without assets or security, we are seeing an entire population barely able to subsist, let alone thrive. The left's response, however, has often been perceived as dismissive or moralistic, with solutions like read theory or join a union that don't resonate with the daily material struggles these men face. Today, we'll talk to Ryan Zickgraf about the profound disconnection between left politics and this segment of the working class. We'll ask how the left can better articulate its values to this group and bridge this gap without defaulting to abstract theories or dismissive rhetoric. Please welcome, coming all the way live. I think he moved. He was in Atlanta. I don't know if he's in Hotlanta anymore. Please welcome Ryan Zickgraf.
Hey, Jason.
What up?
I'm now in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
sort of the a key part of the election, and I'm actually going tomorrow morning. Robert De Niro and Sam Waterston are going to be at the Capitol steps to rally for Kamala. So I got to check this out.
wait. I saw that Trump is kind of like stationing himself in Pennsylvania. So, have you been just reading and seeing a lot of Trump stuff in the local news?
It's been pretty mixed. I mean, where I live, it's it's the capital of Pennsylvania, and I was actually just reading that it's gone more blue over the last half decade,
I saw that.
including like some of the suburbs. But you drive 20 minutes and it's all Trump stuff. But um, here in Harrisburg, it's pretty much 50-50.
Interesting.
But this is the gendered election. We're speaking about men.
We're
And
speaking
I was
about men
actually
today. Yeah.
Yeah, I was actually just hearing that women right now are going to the polls 10 points higher than men.
Um, not to get too deep into it because I do want to, definitely talk about
Sure.
what you wrote about. But I feel like if there was some sort of racial owners group between Democrats and Republicans, I feel like Democrats are like, we'll give you these black dudes, like you can have them, and we'll give you like a handful of like nondescript brown ones from the Middle East as well. Um, the rich ones will stay with us. You can
Yeah.
have the disgruntled like millennials, and we'll take a large swath of the Latino women that vote as white women and another big bunch of white suburban women that bedazzle their jeans. We'll trade you. And it,
That
and
sounds
then
better.
the Republicans were like, no, we don't. Why would we want those black guys? Like a bunch of them can't vote. And you look, it, it'll help you with your racism problem. And they're like, okay, that's fine. That's fine. We'll take them all. We got it. So that in my mind, that's how the
Well,
talk happened.
I will say quickly, I've been now, I mean, because these rallies are happening, in my backyard every week. I've been to Trump. I saw Elon Musk here a couple weeks ago. I went to Kamala rally on Friday, and it is gendered. I mean, at the Musk rally especially, it was like 80% men. And at the Kamala rally, I would say it was probably 65% women. So it did really stand out how gendered um, things are right now.
Which is interesting because the idea that like Donald Trump has something for men is kind of retarded. Like maybe his rich friends, but not regular dude. Unless what you want is just to say like, "Oh, that's gay," and then make N-word jokes out loud. It's like if that's all you wanted to do, you could still do that. It's totally fine.
Speaking of which, there was a piece I think in the Atlantic that came out this weekend saying that Trump wanted to call Joe Biden retarded. His advice, seriously, I am not kidding. He said Joe Biden is retarded, and he wanted to say that like at rallies, and his advisor were like, "No, no, you can't." But that's what he so yeah. I mean, there is a bit of the like Trump will let us say gay and retarded
Yeah.
aspect to the election.
That's for some reason the idea that whoever's in office allows you to say rude things, I'm like, but that's weird because
Yeah.
people say the rudest things right now all the time.
Oh yeah.
I live in Mexico where I'm often surprised at the amount of, let's just say, non-politically correct white people that move down here.
Okay.
Ben and I were at a cafe in downtown Rosarito, and there was a white guy trying to order a latte, and he was having a hard time ordering the drink. The person didn't speak English that well, and I ended up helping him out with my little bit of Spanish, feeling good about myself. And the guy goes, I was like, "Oh, are you visiting?" He's like, "No, I live here." And I was like, "Oh, okay." He goes, "I don't know why they don't speak English here." It's like, we are in Mexico. There's that, but that is a sentiment that I've heard from many people that have moved.
The AMLO allows it, huh?
They encourage it. But let's talk about non racist men, I guess. Um, the
Um,
image of a middle-aged man isolated, struggling financially, and lacking any safety net or support system reoccurs throughout your recent articles. What do you believe are the primary forces driving men into these isolated, economically strained circumstances?
it's interesting that you notice that pattern in my writing, because I guess that's true. But I think part of it is that hit me personally, because I have not that long ago been one of those men. Um, Especially when I was sort of at my end of my leash in Chicago. Before I met my wife, I was an isolated middle-aged man that did not, I was broke. I was getting to the point where my utilities were about to be shut off. I had a pal of mine come and sleep on the floor on an air mattress that was paying me $100 a month. So this was 6 years ago. So I'm not that far from being one of these people. So it comes from a personal place. But so I'm sorry. What was actually your
I'm sorry.
question? Just gonna talk about myself.
No. Like what are the what is impacting these men right now to be so isolated and kind of downwardly mobile? You gave us a few articles, and also in your Jacobin article you linked some other stuff, which is literally where I got it from. I just was
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
reading your links that you put in there, and you wrote another thing about JD Vance, who also kind of speaks to this as well,
yeah.
because he's
Um,
hillbilly adjacent, as he likes to say.
Well, there's a few things that are going on. I mean, one is that we're still mostly living in this post-industrial economy where there's still a big premium for going to college. And
Hmm.
when I talk about like a working class and non-working class, like in these pieces, um, the metric I use is men who do not go to college as opposed to the ones who do, because there is a big divide between college graduates and non-college graduates. And so, in general, when we're talking about the working class, we're just using that, not necessarily like the Marx definition.
Yeah.
But over the last 20 years, um, there has been this big shift where it used to be that men went to college more than
Mhm.
women. But in the last several years, that has changed a lot, to the point where the most recent statistics that I've seen, it's actually 60-40 now, women compared to men. And even in a lot of these big cities where there's a lot of college graduates, women are now out earning men in 22 different cities, including like New
Wow.
York, LA, Chicago, San Francisco. Um, there's a lot of these like post-industrial, like information economy heavy cities now, where, yeah, I mean, because we've been told over and over about the gender wage gap. But um that that still holds strong in some like more rural areas.
Mhm.
But in a lot of big cities, it's actually, in DC, I want to say it's something like women make 110% of what men do. um so I think that is a big part of it, is just the nature of work. And that a lot of men are not, they used to be, more of the breadwinners, obviously. And that the old stereotype was, the men who go to work, provide for the family, the women tended to stay home. That changed more, 2 generations ago. But those trends have continued to shift, where I mean, a lot of women are now the main breadwinners, like, including, I mean, there's so many of my friends where the women has the high earning job.
Yeah.
I have a friend who is like, he considers himself half retired, and he does a lot of the childcare. And so there's just a lot of social shifts that have happened through that, and men just are not handling it well.
I agree with the not handling it well, because I think it's also societal,
Yeah.
and a lot of societies aren't handling it well. And as social media really does dictate the kind of certain culture norms that we want to act like, oh, I don't let social media tell me what to do, as I watch social media all the time. One of the things is like value of a person,
Yeah.
high value man, high value woman. And the idea of, like, I don't think most people understand the reason why women were supposed to stay at home and take care of the children. It's a way to continue to have kids during a booming economy. And then you have kind of fixed in-home care, because that is another source of labor, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot of work, as you will find, to to take care of a child and a house. So as those roles, I wouldn't say shift, but as two income households really start to become the norm in the 80s, as you were describing earlier, still men earned more money, were kind of more so the breadwinner. Um, and now we're looking at a situation where there is no job that's going to save you from your mediocrity. Like, there was a factory job that existed. There was just some job somewhere in your city or your area that you could go to, where you could probably buy a little home, and maybe your wife worked a little bit too, but that's even gone. So being
Yeah.
mediocre
Well,
can't get
yeah,
by anymore.
and like as the nature of work shifts and um more work becomes more tenuous and you get more like the uberization of employment, where you're just a like an independent contractor. um as like, in my parents' generation, a lot of the men stayed in the same job for 30 or 40 years. My
Yeah.
dad retired, was able to work for the state, and he was able to retire um in his late 50s because he stayed at the same job from the stability. And a lot of men got a lot of identity out of their job.
Mm.
But as um good jobs go away and they become more precarious and they become, more, you feel more disposable. There's a bit of a loss of identity just there with work.
And that's interesting that you mentioned like the good jobs, because like, let's talk about some of these jobs that just aren't what they used to be. Besides just deindustrialization, I think everybody starts there, myself included. Trucking, for the longest time, was an industry that, if your pops drove a truck, you probably lived okay. Not so much anymore. Um,
Yeah.
Definitely teaching, for a long time. When I went to back in my day, my teachers were homeowners, or at the very least, they lived in the city where I went to school. If you teach in, like, I don't know, anywhere in the peninsula in the Bay Area, where the hell are you going to live? They were even trying to get, subsidized housing for teachers there, because it's just so expensive to rent when you live in Silicon Valley.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned trucking because that's also an industry where it used to be that you like could buy your own truck or you worked for like a company where you had a truck. But a
Yeah.
lot of times now you basically rent it, and you're like just more of an independent contractor. A lot of these guys don't even work for companies. They just get paid per load. uh
Per
and
mile
they
or
have like
something.
no security. I mean, that industry has been definitely um Uberized. I have a nephew actually that's been talking about going to into trucking, and he doesn't have a college degree. He's
Yeah.
18, and I actually encouraged him to go to the military to do truck driving instead of, the industry at large, because it's pretty miserable. It's gigafied. Doesn't pay like it used to.
Like, go to the military
Yeah.
and go drive trucks in Afghanistan.
Well, look.
You're gonna make six figures. You can't come home for 3 years, but you'll make six
Yeah.
figures.
I'm
Like,
just saying if you're going to do it, and he doesn't have many attachments.
yeah.
I'm not telling you men to all of a sudden go to the military
If
in
you
his situation.
even if you did, I mean, this is one of the questions I have for people, because a good job if you live in Los Angeles, for example, or even where I'm from in the Bay Area, is law enforcement.
Right.
They're gonna pay you 6 figures to walk in the door.
Right.
I mean, you gotta pass psych vals and definitely be physically fit, but outside of that, you know, that's a damn good paying job. Um, I understand why a certain cohort does drift that way, because another thing that I wanted to touch on with this question is, why has the right kind of capitalized on this discussion that we're having right now and made it about liberals and their failure to take care of men?
Well, another factor that I wanted to touch on before we get to that is, I think one big factor in the problem with men these days is sort of the collapse of the social world,
Sure.
that I think is affecting men more because, you know, 20, 40 years ago, you just had men had a lot of, not just deep relationships, but, uh, shallow relationships with, people around them. Like, you had the nuclear family, but you also had extended family. You had, people you met in college. You had maybe people you met in church, social clubs,
Yeah.
the YMCA. You go to bars and you meet people. You go to the barber shop. Well, that, over the time, and then you saw, especially after COVID, that really went off the cliff. I mean, I'm looking at statistics about, men in sports leagues, and even people. In one way, it's good that men aren't drinking as much anymore, but they're instead of drinking at a bar, they're like staying at home and, like, I don't know, maybe vaping or doing edibles and like watching porn and playing video games. So
That sounds
that is
really
a
sad.
that is a poor, replacement for the social. And so that lack of social contact, and women are better at, creating new relationships with friends and men.
It's
So there was a statistic that I saw, recently, where 20% of men, one out of every five men now, have no close friends. And
it's so funny you say that. I just watched one of those horrible YouTube videos where, someone was talking to some other guy that was just rattling off statistics and not citing them. But one of the ones that he was talking about was that men don't have close friends unless they're like really close colleagues, maybe.
mm,
Um, does that have something to do about the precarious nature of a lot of work that a lot of us do? Like, for example, the gentleman you talk about in your piece, you say he's like a 51-year-old line cook at a diner.
yeah,
Depending on how big the diner is, it's probably not that big of a staff.
yeah,
If it's a diner like I think, then it's probably a female wait staff. Either he's gonna be a lot older than them, or,
hmm
um, I don't know, and they're probably not gonna wanna hang out with some weird old guy that's trying to huff paint in the walk-in, you know? I made that huff paint, but the guy didn't huff paint that I know of. But, I I can understand where the disconnect would be, because there was a time when there were social clubs where men would go and just hang out with dudes. And I think, and a lot of people hate when I say this, and I don't give a shit. Um, Real life is so different from online. I appreciate online as I live my life. I work online. It's how I pay my bills, so I do appreciate it. But I had a hell of a lot more fun yesterday hanging out in the real world and talking to people and being in a cool setting with people, opposed to the online world where I'm so isolated. Um, it felt like there was a time where people really were finding community in like video game spaces as well too.
yeah, yeah. That was sort of, for men. That was sort of the cheapened replacement, is that we could play Call of Duty, online with our friends. I mean, I include myself in that. There's a period where a lot of my social connection was, playing with my best friend who, lived in another state, and we played online. But it's just not the same. It's not the same for many reasons. Um, because a lot of the good time that I've had with men, like, I bring up playing sports a lot because it is like
Oh, it's important.
an intense, project that you're doing together. It is very active. You're getting exercise. It's very healthy, and you kind of have to navigate these relationships where, um, you know, somebody might be fouling somebody too hard in a game of basketball, and you
Mhm.
have to navigate that. But then there's like the thrill of winning together. And I don't know, man, getting first place in team deathmatch just doesn't quite do it for me.
Yeah, that's how I feel. But maybe I'm an old person yelling at trains. Um, but there is something to be said about, just competing in real life, even if you're not that good. I have a friend here and she just loves to play tennis. She's not good at it at all, but it's just an activity that
Yeah.
she can do with other people, and she gets a kick out of it. Um,
There's
again, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, one thing that has come up, I think, even in the last few years, that has been one outlet is run clubs in cities. I've
Yeah,
seen those spring up.
I've
Those
seen
aren't
that here and
necessarily
there.
a lot of bros, but it's usually mixed. But I mean, that is one outlet that I see. But especially for working class guys, they're just not involved. Just a lot of working class men are just not involved in anything.
No, why do you think that's because there's no more bowling alleys? I miss
Oh,
bowling.
we're gonna do some bowling alone here.
Uh, I spent my teen years in bowling alleys. I used to hustle drunk dudes. Like, if they would leave a spare, be like, "Oh, $50 says I'll pick that up." If it was this crazy split that I probably could get. I bowled a lot as a young person. I loved bowling alleys. They were very popular where I'm from in Richmond, California. Um, but I don't see them anymore. Like places like that where kids could just hang. Like, it was free for us to bowl if you were under like 18 and bowled in the league. And like it wasn't this place full of a bunch of middle class kids. A lot of us were like broken home kids, and it was the one place we could go, um, and not get into too much trouble. And also there were like, for the most part, there were helpful adults there. But it's just one of those things that's that camaraderie. Like, my father he worked manual labor forever, and he was in bowling leagues with a lot of his coworkers and people that worked in other places around town and in similar industries. And it was just a place where old people, I remember, it's not old people, like people just fucking hung out.
Well,
And
yeah, and you mentioned work leagues, and that is part of the problem with the way that employment has changed, and that people aren't staying in jobs. I mean, we're talking about, my brother, we'll call him Kevin. Um, he, the guy living in my brother's garage. Um, since he's had like 5 jobs in 7 years, he can't build those relationships where he can, get a bowling league together with his coworkers. So there's something about the way that work has changed that has not been great with building relationships. Because like my dad, so many of his friendships were through work, and there's just not anything that's replacing that, except online, which is not the best. so much
We'll
so much
call
of
him.
online is optional, right?
Yeah.
So much of internet friendships are so ethereal. When you're in your hardest moments, are your followers going to be there for you? Maybe you, Jason.
No, you know why? Because I wouldn't put that on anybody, me personally. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's a point where, and this is where the online thing to me gets a little weird, because you can put yourself out there like that to get some sort of sympathy or virtual hug or virtual attaboy. And there's something about that that just makes me feel a little weird. Um, either I'll keep it inside like a good man and just swallow the pain, or luckily I do have a good friend that literally lives like 2 houses over, that that I can vent to, and he in turn vents to me as well. It's a kind of a wonderful situation in that regard. But I know not everybody has that.
Yeah. Yeah. Not only do people, again, a lot of men not have that close friend, but a lot of times they don't have that the sort of loose connection of networks, um, that maybe there was actually part of me that was attracted to go do canvassing. Yeah, I did it a lot during Bernie's campaigns, but even that was like a good way to meet people.
Oh God, yeah. Oh God, yeah. There's so many canvassing events you go to. That's what's weird to me. It feels like we have these political moments, especially from 2016 to 2020. I think that's kind of an important distinction between 2016 to 2020 and then 2020 to 2024. And with that energy that's in the air, with the excitement of Bernie Sanders, the excitement of the idea of candidates who are going to be more left leaning, even if a lot of these people lost, there was such a fervor in the air that everybody wanted to be out and involved. And as a lot of these people ended up losing, another Sanders defeat, the COVID stuff,
Yeah.
then the riots, um, people, it felt like people just kind of retreated. And we returned back to maybe even 2010. Sometimes I feel like we returned back to the 90s when I look at some of this tough on crime and just angry stuff. And it feels like the only people that were able to kind of capture that, again, back to what I was saying before, is the Jordan Petersons of the world
Mm.
that don't really have that expansive of a message. And because he's actually speaking to sympathetically, I think, again, to a group of people that no one's really talking to, they're kind of probably feel like the enemy. Um, then he can interject weird political bullshit and misogynist bullshit in there because he's got your ear.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these guys like Jordan Peterson just at a very basic level just tailor their message directly towards men, and it's something that the left and a lot of liberals don't even feel comfortable doing that unless it's in this context of white men for Kamala, where it's this sort of like, okay, you have this group identity, but it is to be an ally for the Kamala campaign. You know what I mean?
It is, yeah, that is weird. It's so weird. Like, I don't know. I do this goofy shit, and I haven't done it for the last 2 weeks, and they've been fucking with me. But it's cheaper for me to go to the bar. There's a bar in downtown Rosarito where they show every NFL game, and it's cheaper to go to the bar and eat than to pay for the NFL package here. So when I go, there's a handful of expats that live from TJ to this area. I'll go get a dozen donuts for the staff and like who's ever sitting at the bar. Actually, whoever wants them in the restaurant. And I come in and it's kind of like cheers. Hey, you got the donuts? Hey, and you throw them down and we're all talking shit about the games, talking shit about our teams, having this good old time. Um, when I cross that imaginary line called the border, sometimes I don't see that same thing. I don't know if it's the cities that I'm in, LA, San Diego, the Bay Area. They're just too big and fancy to have that kind of almost down home kind of goofy fun. But I don't know. Do you do stuff like that? I know you just moved to Harrisburg, but is that something that you would even do? You find a place that you kind of like going to, show up with a bunch of donuts, or is Harrisburg too woke for donuts? If they're like vegan.
No, dude, this place is pretty working class, man, itself. There's Duck Donuts down the street that just did a collab with the brewery. No, my big social outlet, which is funny because it's kind of my job, but I host trivia every
Yeah.
week at a brewery, and I love that shit because yeah, I work on the internet most of the day. and I'm isolated for the most part. And I go every Thursday night and talk to people, and I hang out after I'm done. I've like made friends through it.
Mhm.
In fact, last Thursday I ended up late at night at the William Penn Club, which was like this private club that this
Oh.
dude let me into, and I was like, hell yeah, play darts. It was very brotastic. We were fist bumping for Trump. No, I'm kidding. We weren't doing that.
Dude, people say some crazy shit to me at the bar, man. Because
Yeah.
it's, you know, oh, I won't get into it, but you know, and it's most of the time I literally just I have laughed in a lot of people's faces.
No, it's good being in a town like this because people are on their phones less. I
Yeah,
just noticed it a difference from when I was living in Atlanta and in Chicago, where people are on the phones all the time, even in bars.
yeah.
But in Harrisburg, people are less on their phones, which makes a big difference in being able to approach. I've had more people buy me drinks.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess because I'm so good looking, but no, I've had people just like approach and have conversations with, and they ended up buying me drinks. It's like more in the last 6 months than I've had in the last 10 years. I swear.
Do you feel it's easier in this environment that you're in to just talk to people randomly?
Yeah, I mean, also, I'm pretty extroverted, and I will talk to strangers like pretty willingly. And that's not the way society has progressed. It's harder to approach strangers, and not only I feel sorry for people like men trying to date or women trying to date right now because everything is so filtered through the apps
Dude, weep
that
for me. Don't weep for them. Weep for fucking me, okay? Don't you dare weep for them. They're fine. You know, I'm not getting a array of fucking taco pics. Nobody's sending me. No.
now, yeah, no, I don't know, man. Like, yeah, everything has to be so app. So to like talk to a random woman in a bar,
Mm,
it seems like
mm.
it's terrifying now.
I mean, where I live, there's a lot of couples, so I don't really have that problem. But when I was on the apps, that shit was trash, dude. Like no one's fucking with you. You gotta be so I don't know what you have to be to have people give a shit about you on a dating app, but nah, dude. I
Well,
much
and
rather
that is now the number one way people meet. I mean,
yeah, sadly.
you seen that graph where they show over the last 50 years how people met their spouses because it was like work, church, through family, through friends, and then they were all pretty high, and then back in 1990, meeting through the internet was very low. And then, especially in the 2010s, Zoom, and it's now like something like 55% of all couples meet on apps.
Yeah, I mean, I believe it. Like how I feel like if you're in a big enough city, if you approach someone in a public space like a bar, you're probably gonna get looked at a little weird. And especially for like younger people, there's so many videos, as we were joking before about gyms, there's so many videos of people trying to approach someone just to talk to them because they find them attractive. And that person doing a video about why they hate getting hit on or don't talk to them. They're minding their own business. They always get bothered by men. That's rough when you have an entire ecosystem telling you that anytime you try to approach someone, it is some form of assault almost. Um,
Well, yeah, and something that doesn't get talked about enough, I think, is that because of social media, all of your interactions, even in a bar, could be recorded and
yes,
broadcast to the internet. So
yes.
you could be judged by every person on earth for doing the wrong thing. So that has to self censor people, to strangers all the time. Because if you try to hit on somebody and you're awkward or, say the wrong thing or they misinterpret it, boom, they could record a thing, put it on TikTok. Everyone hates you.
Yeah, you're the creep. Oh, I know you.
Yeah.
You're the creep on TikTok that told that woman hello.
Yeah.
You're the hello creep. There's a whole
I
video section on you.
Dude, I had somebody in college that accused me of being a stalker, and I didn't.
I didn't mean to be in their
I
windows.
didn't mean to be. Yeah, I was new to. No. Listen, I was not actually a stalker. But what I did do is when she was sitting alone in class, I sat next to her
Okay.
and started talking to her.
Uh-huh.
And then, like, when we were walking out of class, we lived in the same dorm. So sometimes I would walk faster and talk to her then. And then it turns out because I worked with her coworker, she's like, "Oh, you're the stalker." And I was mortified. Oh my God. I'd never talk to her again.
Yeah, how could you?
Yeah.
Then
But
you'd
like,
be the serial killer.
right. But could you imagine if she had done a threat, like a Twitter thread or like a TikTok video where
Mm.
she's trying to record me and she's like, this guy, you know what I mean? I would be like, oh my God, I would never leave my house again.
I can't. Let's talk about that for a second. What happens to relationships?
Somebody in the chat said we're gonna need her side. Well, let's see. She's still on my phone. No, I'm kidding.
Someone said was he on the tree branch? We're in a moment where everything is content for everyone.
Yeah.
Everyone is their own influencer.
Yeah.
I think we have to really get that through everyone's head right now. We are all an influencer now. Some are bigger than others, but we all have influential powers through social media.
Yeah.
Something as innocuous as, let's just say at worst, you're a pest, right? You're not trouble. That can then become content.
Yep.
Every interaction is content. How many dates have you seen people have videos of via TikTok or Reels or something like that, where they're recording paying the bill? I'm like, dude, that's kind of tacky. Like, why would you do that to somebody? How much of that is real? I don't know. But regardless, if it's real or not, it does set a precedent that everyone's recording. As I was walking, the bar that we go to in teaching is going to sound bad, but I don't care what you people say. I know how good of a person I am. The bar that we go to is in the red light district. So
Go on.
there's definitely, it's like in the entry of the red light district. So like right as you walk in, there's kind of the bar. There is the bar. It's not kind of the bar, but next door to the bar is definitely a brothel. And I was seeing for the first time dudes holding their phone. I don't have a phone right now, but they were holding it like this, where the camera is showing. And I was thinking to myself, is this motherfucker recording everybody that's walking around in this area? And I saw multiple people just kind of holding their phone like that, and kind of even having it like this. And I was like, is that what somebody's doing? Because that's fucked up. If so, because there's also like taquerias down there that people go to. People live down there. Not everybody. Like I said, there's a bar that we go to that is not, a bar where you're going to get any extras. It does kind of look like the bar in Dusk Till Dawn, but
What's interesting, and kind of getting back to the men thing, is that I read this New York Times article recently about the return of private clubs, and this is more of an elite thing. This is more of an elite thing, but in, like, say, like New York City or Miami, some of these, I'm sure San Francisco, there's been a return to sort of the limited access, sort of no phone
yeah,
type of club, where it's a bit like what do you call them? I can't think of the name. They're like a series of clubs all across the country. Do you know what I
chain.
mean? They're kind of like work slash play clubs where there's shows and stuff.
Mm-mm.
I don't know. Anyway,
I was gonna say speakeasy, but no.
no, not really. But no, that was interesting to me, is that it was especially an elite male thing to do, was to get these expensive memberships in the clubs where no phones were allowed.
That's kind of dope, though.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, because those are the places where won't feel as self-censored, where a lot of us do all the time.
Yeah,
There's
I
things
think
that I want to say right now that I definitely won't.
I'm not that great at censoring myself, and I'm doing
Mm,
this show by myself, so, let's knock on wood that I still have enough of a phone that I could do this again tomorrow.
yeah.
Um, in Working Class Men Are Not Okay, you explore the differences in earnings between college educated and non college educated people. You note the reversal that has happened over the last 40 years or so of women having more education than men. That being said, non college educated men who at one time could work a factory and provide for their families don't exist the same way it did generations past. Law enforcement, military, for some, as you said, is a gateway out of poverty. And if you have an industry like the oil field or a refinery in your area, those are ways out of poverty. But many, like the man in your piece, toil in low wage work in post industrial America. How should we on the left approach this issue?
How should we on the left? Well, I mean, if we want to talk big picture as far as like policies, I think that Bidenism was actually pretty good for men, as far as Biden's some of his economic policies.
Mhm,
And actually, this is unpopular to say, but some of Trump's economic policies were good too,
mhm,
including like some of the tariffs that imposed on China and some other imports. Is like free trade in general was not good for men, in that it helped the in a lot of the jobs to go overseas, and a lot of
mhm.
the male jobs of manufacturing and engineering, and a lot of those jobs went overseas. Well, it started under Trump, but under Biden, I think some of these things flourished with not only like the tariffs, which Biden did not get rid of. He actually added some of his own on like certain goods. And it's funny now because we're having this conversation about tariffs a bit with Biden and Harris, and I think a lot of people on the left are just reflexively against them because Trump is favor them, but I think they're worth thinking about harder. But um, the infrastructure law, um, where a lot of these big projects all across the country, build bridges, build factories, build roads. Those are in jobs which favor men, and so I think that we should support like the left should support reindustrialization, and that's something I don't think that the left talks about enough. I mean, we often like talk in general about like the labor movement and stuff like that, but we aren't good at like we need to bring new jobs in. A lot of it is just like we need more money for the jobs that exist. And yeah, I think we're going more towards reindustrialization. I worry that the if Kamala wins, that there won't be as much of an emphasis on that, but I think that we're slowly going back. We're edging back to it, and so I think the left needs to support some of these policies.
So, one of the ways that I feel like the right owns this conversation that you're talking about when it comes to like any sort of factory job is the fact that um, the ending of fossil fuels, which sadly isn't going to happen probably in my lifetime, um, is always a talking point of Democrats. I don't know how serious they are, and Republicans use that talking point to talk to people in coal towns or oil field towns to scare them into voting for GOP people because it's like, look, You get this Democrat in here, they're going to get rid of all the oil fields and there'll be windmills and they don't need you. But automation wants to take these people out anyway. And as we're automating more aspects of society, these jobs are going by the wayside regardless. How does the left try to have that conversation that you're saying about, kind of industrial jobs? I know one of the things that a lot of people propose to want to do is we can flip these fossil fuel industries into renewable industries and you can still keep jobs and blah, 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 blah. Like, do you think that's realistic to try to say to people?
Well, not totally, but there is like an incredible amount of work that needs to be done in this country that I wish that any like Trump or Kamala would talk about more, which is like, for instance, I was reading this weekend about Syracuse, New York,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden they discovered a lot of lead in their water to the point
Oof.
where one measurement was like twice the amount of lead that was in the Flint pipes during that water crisis.
Mm.
And that's happening more across this country because so much of our infrastructure, especially of older cities, were built on lead pipes. Well, a big work project is just replacing all of the lead pipes throughout America. You know how much work there would be for that? And I
Yeah.
mean, you could do like a New Deal project
Yeah.
like the old WPA, but with just pipes.
Sans the racism. Right.
Yes,
Right.
yeah, you let men of all colors go go underground and dig dirt and deal with lead pipes and get brain cancer. No, and no, also in trades. I mean, this is one good aspect of Harris's campaign
Mm.
is that there's all this talk about building some billions of dollars of affordable housing. Well, a lot of men would get that work. So um, there's an aspect of that, but I just think it needs to be way bigger. We need to replace all the lead pipes. There's bridges collapsing.
Oh,
I mean, with climate change. I mean, sadly enough, with some of the destructions of hurricanes and um, earthquakes and things, like there's going to be a lot of work rebuilding communities devastated. So, I mean, we really just need to build like a new civilian conservation corps to do all the work that needs to be done. Because the solution has been all of a sudden like there's these jobs opened and to import immigrants. But let's
yeah, capitalism, yay.
yeah, but let's have a healthy jobs program for a lot of these working class guys.
Why do you think no politician has really been talking about this? I mean, Joe Biden talked about an infrastructure plan, or he mumbled about an infrastructure plan. How much of that infrastructure has been implemented? Does everybody have great Wi-Fi now in the States?
No, it's a slow thing. I mean, has been a problem for Biden because like, I feel like the Democrats have taken some of the wrong lessons for Biden's unpopularity.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of from the CHIPS Act, which even the CHIPS Act would help reindustrialize America to a much smaller extent, but it would take the chips manufacturing from overseas and bring it back here.
You mean microchips, not Doritos.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, not potato chips.
Okay.
Uh,
Making sure.
yeah, I mean maybe Pringles. I don't know. Anyway, those aren't real chips. Um, but some of these programs that Biden passed were more long term, and I get why we would focus so much on inflation, but I think that we're going to see some of the benefits of Bidenomics over the next 5 to 10 years. And something that you mentioned in my JD Vance piece I wrote about was how Middletown, Ohio,
Mhm.
which was JD Vance's hometown, and in Hillbilly Elegy, he talks a lot about like the decline of the working class there and about deindustrialization. Well, I actually went to Middletown recently and found that because some of these programs, like Middletown is doing way better than it was. It's no like it didn't turn into Dubai all of a sudden. There's just way more going on. There's way more, there is even like a big project called Renaissance that they're building in the middle of the town. So there just needs to be that, but for a lot of these forgotten places in America. Um, I spent some time in the last couple months. I spent a weekend touring this coal town in central Pennsylvania called Shamokin. And man, it did strike me because you hear stories about like the coal towns, and man, their identity really is wrapped up in coal. I even went to this brewery called like Lost Mine Brewing, and like, isn't that kind of sad? Like
Yeah.
their whole identity is about this something that doesn't really exist anymore. I took a tour of the old mines, and this guy was like super passionate about it, and there just hasn't been that kind of thing to replace. There's this something integral in a lot of men's identity with their work, and we just don't have that anymore.
Um, I know it's getting late where you are, and I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to me. I do want to ask you this one last question that I had on the very long list of questions I had for you.
No, that's great. We can come back again and try to
I want,
solve men.
I just
Let's
want
try to.
easy peasy.
Yeah.
For those that don't know Ryan on the show, Ryan came on the show. I don't even remember the article we had you on about, but for some reason you couldn't do the champagne room with us, and we said we're going to have you come back in like a month or a week. I forgot what it was, and you
Hmm.
came back, and we watched the Hatchet Man video,
Oh shit.
and I ended up
Working class
clipping it.
men were not okay in that video.
The bike, remember the black bike messenger guy?
Mm.
And we spent like an hour dissecting the McDonald's in which he was in, and we made a whole backstory of the kids that were harassing him that he ended up attacking with the hatchet. Or he more attacked the place with the hatchet. But for those that don't know that story, there is a playlist of just the clips, and it's called Hatchet Man, and you can see Ryan in his full comedic glory, and we are just saying outlandish shit during that episode. And it was like me, you, Pascal, and Toussaint. It was like an all-star cast of ridiculousness. And I've gone back and watched that a few times because it's so fucking funny.
I'll have to, man.
But you note in Working Class Men Are Not Okay that a significant portion of this demographic leans towards right populism, often perceived as voting against their interests. What is the left missing in its messaging to this group?
Well, I mean, as I think I mentioned earlier, is that they just don't even really talk to men as a group at all. They feel like awkward about it. Because usually when men are votes, I mean, because like we were just talking about Kamala, white men for Kamala.
Mm-hmm.
Have you noticed that that is the only one people feel comfortable making fun of? I mean, including myself. I made fun of that,
You didn't
but
make
no
fun
one.
of white chicks for Kamala?
I forgot about that. I forgot that there was a white woman.
That was the best one. That was like I didn't see I saw the thing for white dudes for Kamala, like a text that someone shared with me, but I actually saw a little clip of that Zoom call of white women for Kamala, and I was like, oh my God, this is why I live where I live. Not
Well, it sounds like because you're a misogynist, but
duh.
uh,
There's that.
but what's interesting is like recently, I think there has been a growing recognition even among liberals that they do a bad job of trying to model like a good model of masculinity. But what's funny with the Harris campaign is they're trying to make like good old Doug the the model for men, right? Like he's a good man. Trump is the bad man. Doug is the good man, right? But like, what are Doug's qualities besides just sort of being like a wet tissue? Like,
Oof.
what is he modeling besides like it's the poor? Like what are we really grabbing onto there? And it makes a little more sense with Tim Walz, even though I do feel like it's a little performative, but that one's a little more easy to swallow. But it's telling, who liberals think that who the men are that we're supposed to emulate. Because what else are they saying as far as like who are the role models that male role models otherwise? Timothy Chalamet, you know, who are the
Andrew
bros that?
Tate, dude.
Yeah,
Andrew
that's the
fucking
thing.
Tate.
Yeah.
That's the sad reality to me, is that there was a door. I think the derivative of Jordan Peterson, and this is something I haven't heard people talk about, maybe because I just don't pay attention to a lot of bullshit. But Jordan Peterson in these spaces, actually, a lot of these guys in these spaces don't really get talked about that much. It's a lot of more, podcast on podcast violence. But if you
Mhm.
look at the shows that are actually popular, you look at the figures that are popular. um, Joe Rogan still has either the number one or number two podcast. Theo Vaughn
Yeah.
has a top 5 podcast. Another guy named Sean Ryan, I think his name is. He's like an ex-Navy SEAL guy. He's got one of the top podcasts. And Tucker Carlson. So, like, people are listening to some super misogynistic men.
Yeah.
And if you start looking at, YouTube channels to see who's big, it's a lot of guys. Like, again, the derivative of Jordan Peterson is a guy, the now deceased Kevin Samuels,
Mhm.
who is way worse because he doesn't try to hide the misogyny in any sort of weird uh, theory language. It's just like up front. What does he say? If you're 25 and single, you're half off. If you're 30 and single, you're in the discount bin. I was just like, and for a woman, I was like, Jesus Christ. He was just a horrible man. Um, Andrew Tate. Like, these are the people that aren't afraid to say the things, and cats are looking at these guys like this is a dangerous dude because they go against the norm. I was like, if the norm is decency, then yes.
Well, what's interesting is like if you think about it in some ways, like a lot of these big podcasters or influencers are like different models of men that they otherwise don't have in their lives. Like Jordan Peterson kind of represents the father figure. Andrew Tate is like you're the bro at the bar, your wingman or whatever. Tucker Carlson's the guy that is at the bar talking politics with you. All of these guys in certain ways, they're like toxic versions of missing men in a lot of people's lives.
That's what's scary to me.
Yeah.
And they do these shows that are long form and they have a lot of it. So you can work and listen to it. And a lot of that stuff seems pretty innocuous. It doesn't seem that bad. Even their headers aren't really that bad as far as like their thumbnails and stuff. And then you start
Yeah,
listening and whoa, what did you just say?
yeah, and a lot of Joe Rogan is just, kind of stoner conversation. And a lot of it is pretty fascinating because he just like gets in depth and talks about people's lives. But the problem is that in these spaces, there's sort of an overreaction to liberalism's failures of
Yeah.
talking to men. And so it does get into this misogynistic, dark place where you lash out at women and you embrace racism and go full Trump, um and there's no moderating effects, and that's part of the problem, like on the Democratic side too, where you don't have a lot of like necessarily healthy masculinity to help balance out some of the craziness.
It's very true. I don't want to take too much of your time, Ryan. I know it's late where you are in Harrisburg. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me. Can we bring you back for a non very special episode where we can go into the champagne room and then I could show you fucked up videos for like 30, 40 minutes, and we just talk mad shit. Is that cool?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's ball sometime.
Then we can have a trivia off.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
want to. Well, before you go, you were on a trivia game show and you won.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that real quick before you go.
Oh yeah, sure. I was on this game show called Person, Place, or Thing, and I was on 3 episodes. I choked really bad on the first one because I won, and it was like the mini game,
Oh.
where it was like 60 seconds and you had to name a person, place, or thing.
Mhm.
And I got the Kremlin as the place. I can't even remember what the person was, but the thing, I was so stupid because they asked, it's a sea animal and something you wash your car with, and I could not think of it.
Sponge.
Yeah, I know. I choked. I lost $5,000 by not.
Oh.
Yep.
You know who I'm Facebook friends with, speaking of trivia? Mike Upchurch, the Jeopardy champion.
Who?
Mike Upchurch, the Jeopardy champion.
Oh, I don't watch Jeopardy.
Oh, well, excuse the fuck out of me. Jesus. Instead of like fucking Alex Trebek fucks your girlfriend. Like, I don't watch it. Fuck Trebek. That slick dick motherfucker.
No, yeah, so I gotta say though, I came back the next night and won the 5K. So I am a game show champion.
Okay, but fuck Alex Trebek because he's,
Well, no, he's dead. We're not gonna talk shit about him.
I mean, you can. It's not like he can do anything unless he's gonna
Yeah,
come
but
back to get you.
I feel like Alex Trebek was actually a good model of masculinity. He was really smart. He was in command. He was not afraid to call people out for being nerds and socially awkward. Dude did his job for like 40 years.
He did. He
had a cool stash.
If you were bored, there is a video of when people thought Alex Trebek was black.
What?
You should. Yep. Oh yeah. Please watch it.
Okay.
It is going to make you laugh because he used to tan, and his hair is naturally curly. He looks like some of my uncles. You got to see this video of Alex Trebek back in the day talking about when people thought he was black. And you look at Alex Trebek in the video, you're like, oh, yeah. It wasn't like that came out of nowhere, Trebek.
Well, I'm going to use that now. Alex Trebek, model of masculinity.
Tweet it. That's the viral tweet right there. Because he also, in all fairness, to your point, he kind of looked like the kind of cat that can handle himself if he needed to.
Yeah. And I'm sure he had no problem with the ladies.
Oh, God, no. No problem whatsoever.
Yeah.
Whatsoever.
Fucking dapper.
Oh, yeah.
Articulate, could correct you on your mispronunciations. I mean, when he spoke French, sometimes even I was like, "Woo."
So there you go. Model of masculinity. Be more Trebek-like.
Yes.
Don't be Pat Sajak. You don't want to be Pat Sajak. You want to be Trebek-like.
Or Jason Miles. I think you do a pretty good job here of being a dude.
Don't be like me. Do better. Do better. Because if you're going to be like me, then
I nut quick.
Then you have that problem. And then...
All right, we're going to get in trouble. So.
Ryan, again, thank you for hanging out with me. Wherever you are watching or listening to the show, there's a link in the description to Ryan's article that he wrote for Jacobin not too long ago. It was about a month ago.
Yeah.
And what are you working on next?
I have actually a piece coming out in Compact tomorrow of actually about labor and why we're going to miss Biden and why Kamala and Trump are not going to be as good on organized labor.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yes.
Well, I would, let me know when it's out, and I would love to have you on to talk about that as well.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Ryan. His name is Ryan Zickgraf, friend of the show. He's moving further east into colder territory. If you were still in hot Atlanta, might be able to come out and visit you, but you're in Harrisburg, and I don't know if we can make that trip. Thank you guys for hanging out and watching the show. If you liked what we did here, please hit like. Please don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification bell, because I do stuff like this more often than you think. Surprise streams. And since I've been going back and forth with all these rock stars trying to do this series about 2004, I'm probably going to be doing a lot more of these impromptu streams. So definitely hit subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know. I'll try to give you guys the best heads up I possibly can. So, for example, I usually say that we'll be back Tuesday, but we won't be back Tuesday because that's Election Day. And we're going to do our Election Day show tomorrow. So the whole gang will be in on Monday at 6 p.m. Pacific time. That is 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. And if you live in another crazy time zone, I just don't know. Those are the only ones I'm going to quote. But it's 6 p.m. Pacific time. We will be here Monday. I think I called the show like Who You Voting For or something like that. And we'll be back for the regular scheduled shows. We'll be back for Wednesday for the Red Zone. We'll be back for Thursday with the show we have. And definitely we'll be back Saturday with a fun music show. I saw someone in the chat talking about heavy music. We'll be talking about heavy music as I'm working on my very extended Fisher-like essay on hair metal. Don't you laugh. I'm going to make it very serious. I already showed it to Mike Watson. Watson really dug it. I'm super excited about that. So again, tomorrow, 6 p.m., be here. Be here with us. Free champagne show, because it's the pre-election day show, so we're going to go longer if we have to. And before that, at 5 p.m. Pacific time, I'll be hosting Give Them an Argument, which I think Ben's going to air the live show that we did, or the book launch. I'm going to say book launch, a little different than the live shows that we usually do. I thought it was a very interesting discussion that we got to have in the book launch. Of course, at the end, I got to do my Montel Williams thing where I got to take the microphone out and harass people, ask questions. It's my favorite thing to do whenever we do a live show. So got to do a little bit of that. That'll be on there. So you can tune in to Give Them an Argument at 5, 6 o'clock. An hour later, we're here. Or watch the whole Ben thing and just come back later. It'll still be around. It's on YouTube. As long as I don't do something fun and like play a video that we can riff on, get the thing taken down, it'll be up. So on that note, thank you guys so much. Again, wherever you're watching or listening to the show, not only is there a link in the description to Ryan's article, there's a link in the description to read my latest and all the other articles that are the crisis papers. And you can also buy certain champagne rooms where we really went off the rails and had way too much fun. And I think they're funny. I'm literally cutting up, I think next week, some clips are going to come out of us interrogating the cuck couch. Yes, the cuck couch. So for those of you that remember that champagne room episode, I thought it was pretty funny. If you've never seen it, then you can watch that clip and think to yourself, oh, wow, I would like to own this entire episode. You can get that now. And that link takes you to all that stuff. And it's the link after we write about Ryan's article. Then it's all the links that we have. It's in the description. Every episode. Even if you're listening to it on audio, it's in the description. And on that note, wait a minute. Newer Yank says my love of Van Halen is problematic. No one loves me outside of this show, so let's talk about that for a second. don't you dare talk about the two eras of Van Halen that matter. It's the Roth years and the Hagar years. We can have a Van Halen discussion. If you guys want a whole Van Halen show, I am down. We should get Darren Paltrowitz on that one, who wrote that very, very good David Lee Roth book, who came on the show to talk about the David Lee Roth book. Let's talk about it. We can talk some Van Halen, because I have some, in writing this hair metal piece, I've had to really flesh out a lot of my Van Halen thoughts, which I think you guys might appreciate some of these perspectives about the maturation of the band. So, yeah. Nuri, you just extended the fucking show. You want to talk about Motley Crue? We can talk about Motley Crue. I'm a Motley Crue fan, and I think I have to admit that they probably have 8 good songs. Maybe like 13. Between 8 to 13 songs. I don't know how they can do a 3-hour concert, because a lot of their records were filler. Girls, Girls, Girls is so bad with filler that they cover Elvis Presley on the last song of side 2. But yeah. Tony Rest says, don't ever provoke Van Halen fans into talking about 2 eras of Van Halen. I'm here for it. If you guys want to leave a comment about your favorite Van Halen era, please leave a comment. I don't care in which, you leave it in the audio, leave it in the YouTube comment, send a patron comment. I don't give a damn. I'm always up to hear people's Van Halen opinions. Most people just kind of dig what they dig when they got into the band. So if you got into the band during the Hagar years, then maybe you dig the Hagar stuff. But most people got into the band with the David Lee Roth years. That is a very different band. It's extremely different. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that the kind of driving force behind the music, the Van Halen brothers, are maturing themselves musically. And one thing that Eddie is doing by the last Roth record, which is 1984, is really composing pieces of music, and he doesn't have to really shine on them. And if you listen to the last 2 records, you can kind of see that by 1984, that band went as far as they were going to go with David Lee Roth, because he definitely wanted to go in a much different direction, much more vaudeville, much more Hollywood, and that's not where that band wanted to go. I think they wanted to be serious songwriters, and you really hear it by the time the band gets to OU812. You know, but if you really want to get into it, motherfucker, let's go. But can't wait for the piece to come out, for you guys to read it in the Revol Press book, What's Left of Metal. I want to get started on Fish. Fish is a money-making entity. That's all you people need to know. They print fucking money. I've never seen a group make money like Fish, as far as them playing live at a venue that I worked. The numbers that I saw almost look like festival numbers. Insane amount of money that a band like Fish generates. That's why people love them. That's why venues and promoters love them. Love them. They are the soundtrack to the quasi-rebellious, nonpartisan bourgeoisie. Think about that for a second. All right. Now I really am out. Don't forget, Crisis Papers is out now. Bam. One of Us is the Killer, Celebrity, Cancel Culture, and the Illusion of Politics and Neoliberal Realism. And yes, I named it after a Dillinger Escape Plan song. We are out.